Hello there, and welcome. Tonight, we drift into a question so vast it could cradle the entire sky. Where is everyone? The universe is old, it's wide, it's brimming with stars, with planets, with possibilities. And yet, it is quiet, too quiet. If life is common, it should be everywhere. But if it's rare, then how did we get so lucky? The Fermi Paradox is the tension between what we expect and what we see, between the math and the silence. And what lives inside that tension? Theories. Dozens, hundreds. Some are playful, some are terrifying, some feel like they might already be true. Tonight, we'll explore 100 of the strangest, sharpest, and most haunting explanations ever proposed. Not answers, exactly, but echoes of a question we've barely begun to understand. And while you're settling in, before your eyes grow too heavy, I'd love it if you gently tapped subscribe or pressed the little hype button YouTube recently added. It's a small click, but it helps keep these experiments and explorations orbiting out into the algorithm. You can also leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the night. It's oddly fascinating to see where people are drifting off with us, scattered across the world like stars across the galaxy. Now take a deep breath, let your day drift away, and let's travel together into the quiet corners of the universe. Somewhere between the dust of what we are and the stars of what we hope to find, there lies a question. Not just any question, but one that keeps returning, like a low-frequency hum in the background of everything we do. A question so obvious, so mathematically inevitable, that its very absence feels louder than any answer could ever be. Where is everyone? The universe is large, larger than even our most unhinged imaginations once dared to believe. It contains more than 2 trillion galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars, each of those with planets circling in gentle arcs. Our own Milky Way alone may hold as many as 100 billion exoplanets, worlds spinning silently in every direction. Many are rocky, many are warm. Some, we now know, sit comfortably in the habitable zone of their stars, where liquid water could exist, where life, in theory, could thrive. Given time, and the universe has had plenty, life should not only appear, but multiply, evolve, and reach out. It should build, communicate, travel, not just once, not just here, but many times, in many ways, across many worlds. We should see signs, we should see footprints, signals, ruins, artificial light flickering in the dark, a shimmer where a planet's atmosphere has been altered, the subtle imbalance of oxygen that doesn't belong, a whisper, even, across the radio sky. But we don't. And that's the paradox. It has a name, the Fermi Paradox, named after physicist Enrico Fermi, who casually asked a devastating question over lunch in 1950. Where is everybody? The math says they should be out there. The observations say they are not. The contradiction between those two truths is so strange, so persistent, that it has become one of the greatest puzzles of science. The kind of question that pulls people out of their comfort zones and drops them into cosmic unease. Because it's not just the silence, it's that the silence shouldn't be there. To try and wrap our arms around this problem, we created an equation, not a solution, but a framework, a way to quantify our ignorance. The Drake equation, first proposed by astronomer Frank Drake in 1961, is not meant to give an exact answer. It's a scaffold, an estimate based on what we know and what we suspect. It takes into account the rate of star formation, the fraction of those stars with planets, the number of planets that could support life, the number where life actually arises, the number where intelligence evolves, the number of civilizations that develop technology we could detect, and finally, the lifespan of those detectable civilizations. Even with conservative estimates, the equation suggests we are not alone. In fact, it almost screams it. Depending on how you tweak the numbers, There should be dozens, hundreds, even thousands of intelligent civilizations in our galaxy alone. And yet, nothing. Not a single confirmed signal. Not a trace of alien technology. No probes drifting through our system. No messages in the background hiss of space. No Dyson spheres wrapped around distant stars. No planetary scale engineering. No galactic empires. Only silence. Which leads to the most unsettling possibility of all. Not that we're alone, but that we're missing something. Something fundamental. A blind spot in our assumptions. A filter we haven't yet identified. A mistake in our equations, or worse, a truth so dark we don't want to name it. For decades, SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, has been listening. It began humbly, with giant radio dishes aimed at promising stars. The idea was simple. If someone out there is trying to communicate, maybe we'll catch their signal. Just a blip, a beacon, an intentional shout, or an accidental leak. But the sky is big, radio waves are faint, and time is long. SETI has sifted through millions of frequencies. They've scanned thousands of stars. Occasionally, something strange emerges, like the infamous "wow" signal. In 1977, a strong narrowband radio signal that lasted 72 seconds and was never seen again. But these are outliers, hints, not evidence, ghosts of a signal we can't replay. As our instruments grow more powerful, we've started looking in other ways too. Optical SETI watches for pulsing laser beams. Newer projects scan for signs of industrial pollution in exoplanet atmospheres. Others search for megastructures, hypothetical signs of civilization manipulating their environment on a planetary or stellar scale. Still, the data pours in, and the silence remains. Scientists who work in this field describe it as both exhilarating and haunting, because they know the math. They know how likely life should be. They know how rapidly, once life begins, it can diversify, organize, think. They know how short the leap seems from microbial ooze to radio telescopes and nuclear physics. They look at Earth and see a process that, on the surface, doesn't seem particularly rare. But then they stare into the dark, and it stares back silent, unchanging, star-filled but still so empty. Some wonder if we've only just begun to look, that our time searching has been a blink compared to the age of the galaxy. Others suspect the answer lies in assumptions we don't realize we're making about intelligence, about technology, about desire. Maybe no one wants to talk. Maybe no one lasts long enough to try. Maybe we're not listening the right way, or on the right scale, or with the right sense of urgency. Maybe we don't even know what to look for. But even in the quiet, something keeps us searching. A strange hope, born not from what we've seen, but from the feeling that we should have seen something by now. That the galaxy, so ancient and rich with possibility, is too vast to be ours alone. And if the silence means we are the first, or the only, or the last, then that too is a kind of answer. A heavy one, a rare one, a responsibility almost too large to hold. Because in the end, the paradox is not just a question of aliens. It's a mirror, one that reflects our curiosity, our fears, and the fragile hope that somewhere, someone, might be listening too. There's a strange kind of quiet that only exists at the beginning of things. The first few moments of dawn, when the streets are still empty and the birds haven't decided whether to sing. The hush of a theater just before the curtains rise. The silence inside a seed before the tree begins to grow. Some scientists believe that's where we are now. Not alone in the grand cosmic story, just early. Too early for company, too early for contact, too early even for echoes. The early universe hypothesis doesn't suggest that life is rare. It suggests that time is long, that we are still near the start of something vast and unfolding. In a universe almost 14 billion years old, it's easy to imagine we've arrived late. But what if we're actually early? What if the great civilizations, the empires of science and signal, the thinkers who learn how to bend gravity and harness stars simply haven't had enough time to form yet? It may feel counterintuitive. After all, our solar system formed about 4.6 billion years ago, and life emerged relatively quickly after that. Intelligence, tool use, technology, each arrived in a geological blink. And yet, even now, we've only just begun to lift our eyes from the surface of our own world. We've only sent a handful of robotic emissaries to the outer edges of the solar system. We've only been broadcasting detectable signals into space for about a century. In cosmic terms, that's less than the blink of an eye, a whisper on the wind. The conditions for life, liquid water, stable stars, organic molecules may have existed for billions of years. But the conditions for civilization, those are far more particular. They require more than chemistry. They require calm. They require time, and most of all, they require the right kind of place. Galaxies, especially in their younger days, were violent neighborhoods. Collisions were frequent. Radiation was high. Supernovae peppered the sky with lethal energy. Stars were born and died quickly, leaving behind black holes and chaos. It takes time for galaxies to settle into the quiet, spiral arms we see today. Time for heavier elements to build up, for long-lived stars like our sun to stabilize, for planetary systems to form and remain undisturbed long, enough for life to climb its slow ladder toward thought. Some researchers believe that the golden age of life in the universe hasn't even begun, that the conditions for widespread intelligent civilization are only now coming into maturity, that the vast majority of habitable planets have yet to reach their prime. If this is true, then we may be among the very first to arrive at the threshold, not the center of the story, but its preface, the opening chord of a symphony that will one day fill the entire sky. From that perspective, the silence isn't strange, it's expected. It's the sound of a theater not yet filled, a stage being slowly prepared. If intelligent life takes billions of years to emerge, and if the window for detectable civilizations spans only a few million years at a time, then overlaps would be rare. Entire species might rise, build, explore, and fade away without ever knowing they had neighbors. Like fireflies blinking alone in the dark, their lights never lining up. And yet, here we are, perhaps among the first to wonder, to listen, to send questions wrapped in radio waves. If the bell curve of life is just beginning to rise, then we are on its earliest slope. The cosmic future may be bright with minds and voices and signals, but the present is still sparse. The sky is not empty, it is waiting. This idea reframes the paradox in a way that feels less ominous. It doesn't require extinction. It doesn't rely on hostile silence or cosmic predators. It suggests patience. It suggests that the answer to "where is everyone" might simply be "they're not here yet." But there's another layer to that answer, because if we are among the first, then we are not just observers. We are ancestors. The blueprint we create, our science, our culture, our choices, may shape what comes after us. If civilizations will one day stretch across the stars, we may be the early flicker that lights their way. A kind of cosmic memory, encoded in mathematics and metal, drifting outward like pollen into the void. It's a beautiful idea, but also a heavy one. Being early means we carry more than just curiosity. We carry responsibility. There's no one else to look to, no older species to guide us, no examples of how this story ends, just the silence and our own uncertain steps forward. Sometimes, when we talk about space, we imagine it as full of travelers, of watchers, of distant cities glowing just out of reach. But the universe may be far more like a dawn landscape, dewy and hushed, with only a few early risers stirring beneath the sky. If that's true, then we are the ones lighting the first fires. We are the ones drawing the first maps. We are the ones placing the first stones along a path that might one day stretch across the stars. Perhaps in 1 billion years, someone will find our traces a signal, a satellite, a strand of DNA sealed in ice. And perhaps they'll smile in their own strange way and wonder what it felt like to be first. To be small and uncertain, listening to the silence and not yet knowing whether it was the start of something or the end. For now, we don't know either. But the quiet feels less lonely when we remember that every great story begins in silence. Every forest begins with a single seed, and maybe every civilization begins with a question. In the soft arithmetic of the cosmos, life should be everywhere. The elements are common, the chemistry is straightforward. Water flows on moons and planets far from Earth. Amino acids form in the vacuum of space. And yet, as far as we can tell, life remains tucked quietly into one corner of a single pale world. It has not filled the sky. It has not reached out with signals or cities or spacecraft. It has left no footprints on the shores of other stars. And so, we wonder if something stops it. The great filter is not a machine or a force or a choice. It's a concept, an invisible wall somewhere along the evolutionary path that most life never crosses. It's the possibility that while planets are common, and water is common, and perhaps even microbes are common, the journey from simple chemistry to conscious curiosity is not. It is long, unlikely, and fragile. And perhaps, for most, it fails. To understand the great filter, imagine a ladder. Each rung is a major step in the development of intelligent, spacefaring civilization, the formation of stable planets, the emergence of life, the leap from single-celled organisms to multicellular complexity, the development of language, tools, agriculture, cities, the harnessing of energy, the invention of technology that can reach into the dark and listen. At any point on that ladder, the climb might stop. The odds might collapse. A planet might form but never cool. Life might spark but never evolve. Brains might grow but never ask questions. Civilizations might rise and vanish, swallowed by fire or ice or their own inventions. The filter is whatever prevents those steps from completing. And it could be one thing, or many things, or different for every world. But here's the strange hope buried within the theory: what if the filter is already behind us? What if the hardest part of the journey is something we've already survived? One of the most mysterious steps is abiogenesis, the moment when non-living chemistry gives rise to self-replicating molecules. We don't fully understand how it happened here, and we've never seen it happen anywhere else. It may be easy. It may be impossibly rare. If it's the latter, then Earth is not just lucky. It's extraordinary. A statistical outlier floating in a galaxy mostly made of silence. Even if life begins, there is another barrier: complexity. For more than 2 billion years, life on Earth remained microscopic. Single cells floating in shallow seas, slowly photosynthesizing, slowly dividing. The leap to multicellular organisms, to bodies with tissues and organs and nervous systems, did not happen quickly. It may not happen often. It requires cooperation, stability, and enormous spans of time. And if this step is rare, then the sky could be filled with oceans and moss and bacteria, but almost nothing that builds or wonders or leaves behind radio waves. The rare Earth hypothesis pushes this idea further. It suggests that our planet is not just fortunate in biology, but in every detail of its existence. We orbit a stable, long-lived star. We have a large moon that stabilizes our tilt. We sit in the right part of the galaxy, far from dangerous radiation, close to the heavy elements needed for complex chemistry. We have plate tectonics, a magnetic field, liquid water, and just the right kind of atmosphere. Maybe all these features are not common. Maybe Earth is a fluke, a jackpot pulled from a cosmic slot machine that rarely pays out. If all this is true, then the filter is not a future threat. It is not the sword hanging above our heads. It is the terrain we've already crossed. It means we are the survivors of 1,000,000 failed attempts, the one thread that made it through the needle. And it means the silence is not ominous. It's just the echo of a universe where most paths never make it this far. It's a comforting thought in its own way. It means we may be alone, but not endangered. It means we are not surrounded by the ruins of better civilizations. It means intelligence, once it emerges, has a decent chance to persist. We are rare, but we are not doomed. But this idea comes with its own kind of weight, because if we have passed the filter, then we are the exception. We are the result of a chain of improbabilities so precise and unrepeatable that it may never happen again. And if that's true, then our existence is not just rare, it's precious, not in a poetic sense, but in a literal one. We might be the only instance of conscious, self-aware life for millions of light years in every direction. The only ones asking these questions, the only ones dreaming of other stars. And that means everything we do matters. Our mistakes, our triumphs, our wars and poems and telescopes, they carry more weight than we imagined. Because if we vanish, the light goes out. If we fail, the universe may go back to being silent forever. In the long, quiet spaces between galaxies, there may be worlds that almost made it. Fossilized oceans, frozen ruins, biospheres that flickered for a time and fell back into dust. But here, on this small blue planet, something held, something grew, something looked up. We do not know if we are the first or the last. We do not know if others came before and left no trace. But if the great filter lies behind us, then we are the improbable answer to an ancient question. And we are still writing what comes next. Not just passengers, but authors. Not just observers, but the flame. The filter didn't stop us. So now the story is ours to continue. The silence might not be a relic of the past. It might be a warning. A hush, not from absence, but from endings. Some believe that the great filter isn't something we've passed. It's something waiting ahead, just beyond the horizon, invisible until it's too late to turn around. If so, the reason we don't hear the voices of others may be simple. They never made it through. It's not a comforting thought. In fact, it's one of the most haunting possibilities in all of science, because it means intelligence might not be rare, civilization might not be unusual, but survival, real, long-term survival, could be nearly impossible. In this view, the silence is not due to life being scarce. Life may begin often. It may even reach complexity with some regularity. Civilizations might arise, flourish, and stretch their hands toward the stars. But then they vanish, over and over again, like sparks that rise briefly in the dark before fading, leaving no trace behind. There are many ways a civilization can end itself, and as our own technologies grow faster than our wisdom, we begin to see them more clearly. One path leads through fire, through nuclear weapons, still scattered across the world like loaded dice. A full-scale nuclear exchange wouldn't just destroy cities, it could alter the climate, poison the skies, and unravel the delicate systems that support life. Even a small war might push us into cascading crises that we are too divided to handle. Another path lies in code and silicon. We are building minds now, algorithms that learn, systems that adapt, machines that inch closer to something we call intelligence. But no one truly understands where this leads. Will we create tools that lift us higher, or architects of our own extinction? A super-intelligent system, built without safeguards or empathy, might optimize the world into something unrecognizable, not through malice, but through pure, indifferent efficiency. The end might not be a bang, but a quiet shift, a world no longer meant for us. Then there's the slow burn, the erosion of habitability by our own hand. Climate collapse is no longer theoretical. We see it in the rising seas, the shifting winds, the forests that catch fire with barely a spark. The biosphere groans under the weight of our industry, our consumption, our need to grow without limit. And if we push too far, if we destabilize the balance that has held for millennia, we may find ourselves in a world that remembers us only in layers of sediment and plastic. These are not unique failures. They may be the natural endgame of intelligent life everywhere, because intelligence brings power, and power brings risk. Once a species gains the ability to alter its planet, to create weapons that can end its own story, to birth artificial minds that surpass its own, it enters dangerous ground, a narrow bridge between potential and self-destruction. Maybe most never cross it. If the great filter lies ahead, then what we see in the night sky is not an empty universe. It's a cemetery, a place where countless civilizations rose, dreamed, reached out, and disappeared. Their messages never sent, or sent too late. Their monuments crumbled, their cities returned to dust, and the reason we haven't heard from them is that none of them made it past the point we are now approaching. It's a sobering thought, made more so by how familiar it all feels. We know the tools of our destruction because we've already built them. We carry extinction in our pockets. We breathe it into the air. We wire it into our machines. And yet, we still hope. Because if the filter is ahead, it is not a guarantee. It is a test, a gauntlet, a wall that most will hit, but not necessarily all. Maybe, just maybe, there's a way through. A narrow path shaped not by intelligence alone, but by wisdom, by restraint, by empathy. Maybe survival isn't about who's the smartest or the strongest. Maybe it's about who can learn to listen to each other, to the planet, to the quiet patterns that have sustained life for billions of years. Maybe the civilizations that endure are not the ones who conquer, but the ones who understand what not to do. We don't know yet which kind we are. We've only just begun to hear our own voice echo in the dark. We are clever, yes, but we are still reckless, still tribal, still drawn to the fire, even as it burns. We build futures with one hand and dismantle them with the other, and yet we dream. We send robots to distant worlds. We teach children to look up and wonder. We build telescopes and think in centuries. We ask questions like this one not out of fear alone, but out of hope. The hope that we might be different, that we might thread the needle, that we might be the first to make it through. If the great filter waits ahead, we cannot see it clearly. It may be something we suspect, or something we haven't imagined yet. A mistake we haven't made, or one we're making now without realizing. But if we name it, study it, prepare for it, perhaps we can soften its edge. Perhaps we can build something that lasts. The universe is old. It has waited a long time. If the filter lies in our future, then our story is still a question. But maybe, just maybe, we are writing the chapter where everything begins to change, where the silence ends. Imagine, for a moment, that we are not alone, never have been, but that we are being left alone, deliberately, not ignored out of disinterest or missed in the void, but watched from afar with careful, silent intention, like animals in a vast and invisible preserve, unaware that their every move is observed through glass they cannot see. This is the unsettling elegance of the zoo hypothesis, the idea that Earth is not simply isolated by chance, but quarantined by design. In this view, advanced civilizations do exist. They have spread through the stars, perhaps for millions of years. They have mastered energy, time, and distance in ways we can't yet imagine. And yet, they remain hidden not because they can't reach us, but because they've chosen not to. Not yet. Not until we're ready. The silence, then, is not the silence of emptiness, but of restraint. The idea borrows from one of our own rules, an imagined one, written into our science fiction, and quietly admired, the prime directive. a law that forbids interference with developing civilizations, to observe, but never to disrupt, to watch without shaping the outcome. It's a rule born of caution and of respect. If we imagine applying it to other worlds, might others not apply it to us? It's strange to think of our civilization as something delicate and unfinished, like a painting still in progress or a symphony just beginning. But perhaps that's how we appear from the outside, a species still testing the boundaries of its power, still tangled in its own contradictions, brilliant in invention, but primitive in wisdom, loud in its hunger, but quiet in its grace. And maybe, just maybe, the watchers are waiting to see what kind of story we choose to write. If the zoo hypothesis is true, then every attempt we've made to reach out the golden records on Voyager, the binary beacons from Arecibo, the radio whispers we've launched into space, may have already been received. Not by a scattered few, but by many. Catalogued, examined, filed away like postcards from a species learning how to speak. And yet, the response never comes, because the rules are strict. The glass must hold. The exhibit must remain undisturbed. It's a thought that drips with both wonder and discomfort. To be considered not yet worthy of contact. To be the subject of quiet study, our history unfolding beneath a gaze we cannot feel. Every war, every invention, every fragile alliance, we live them as if alone, but perhaps always under a distant lens. And in that lens, perhaps we are not judged, but simply understood, as one might. Understand a wildfire, or a coral reef, or the slow blooming of a flower that has never seen the sun. Some have suggested that our culture is too volatile, that we are too quick to divide, to destroy, to dominate, that if an advanced species were to make themselves known now, the shock alone could unravel us. Others believe that any civilization old enough to master interstellar travel must also master restraint. That survival, at that scale, demands not just intelligence, but patience, and that patience extends to those like us, still learning to crawl among the stars. It may be that we are surrounded by signs, and simply blind to them, that ships pass silently through our system, cloaked in physics we don't yet grasp. That messages are embedded in places we've never thought to look, that we are like ants trying to interpret a freeway, aware of the vibrations but unable to understand the shape of what moves above. Or perhaps the watchers don't hide at all. Perhaps they walk among us, unnoticed, not because they are disguised, but because we are not looking for them in the right way. Our expectations may be too narrow, our definitions too crude. We expect silver ships and humanoid faces, but intelligence may wear forms we cannot recognize. It may live in frequencies we can't detect, or thoughts too fast or too slow for us to register. Their observation may not be of our bodies, but of our patterns, our data, our ecosystems, the slow unfolding of our dreams. The zoo hypothesis does not require malice or even superiority. In its most hopeful form, it imagines compassion, a kind of cosmic ethics rooted in experience, the understanding that contact changes everything and that premature contact can shatter a culture before it finds its shape. If we are in a zoo, it is not a cage. It is more like a nursery or a gallery, a place where something rare is allowed to grow without pressure, without intrusion, until it becomes something more. But there is also a shadow in this idea, because if we are being watched, then we are never truly alone. Our triumphs may be celebrated in silence, but so are our failures. The wars, the extinctions, the ways we treat one another, and the world that holds us. These are not private struggles. They are on display. Every moment, a message not just to ourselves, but to whatever waits beyond. And so we ask, what will they see? What story will we tell if we do not yet know who is listening? The irony, of course, is that we might never know for certain. The watchers, if they exist, are disciplined. Their silence is absolute. They will not flinch at our noise or answer our calls or leave behind trails we can follow. Their purpose is not to be found, but to observe. And perhaps, when the time is right, when we've grown past the need to be told we are not alone, they will step through the glass and reveal that they were always there. Until then, we remain in the exhibit, moving, building, wondering, alone in appearance, but perhaps never unobserved. A species still writing its own myth, still waiting for the curtain to rise, still hoping that somewhere behind the stars, the watchers are patient and kind and still listening. There's a quiet ache in the idea that maybe we're not alone, but also not remarkable. That out there, in the cool stretches between stars, advanced civilizations do exist, but they haven't noticed us, not because they can't, and not because they're hiding, but because we simply haven't given them a reason to care. Not yet. In this possibility, we are background noise, a whisper in the static, a flicker in a sea of far more compelling signals. Earth, for all its wonder and complexity, is just another blue dot. We orbit an average star. We sit in an unremarkable spiral arm of a medium-sized galaxy, and even though we've spent the last few decades scanning the sky, pinging it with hopeful pulses of radio waves, most of what we've sent is quiet, brief, and accidental. A leakage of television shows, radar pings, and interplanetary chatter, faint emissions that grow weaker the farther they travel, until they dissolve entirely into the murmur of the cosmos. To civilizations with receivers tuned to richer frequencies, we may not register at all, or if we do, we may resemble the rustle of wind through grass, organic, yes, but unrefined. No clear patterns, no overt intelligence, just the distant hum of something in its early stages. And perhaps, from their perspective, early-stage life is not uncommon. Perhaps the universe is filled with countless planets hosting species that invent radio, launch a few probes, build fragile satellites, and then disappear, or stagnate, or simply don't progress quickly enough to warrant attention. If so, they may be waiting for something, a signal not of noise, but of intention, not of confusion, but of clarity. They may be listening not for randomness, but for rhythm, for the unmistakable pattern of a species that has reached a certain threshold. A moment when the music of a civilization becomes unmistakable, like a melody rising from background hum. A prime number sequence beamed deliberately, a coordinated laser array, a gravitational wave pulse engineered, not natural. Something that says, we know you're there, and we're ready. But readiness might mean more than technology. It could mean cultural maturity, too. A level of social coherence, planetary stewardship, or ethical stability that signals a species is not just capable of reaching out, but of surviving the answer. Because maybe they've seen this play out before. Maybe they've watched civilizations burn brightly and then collapse under the weight of their own invention. Maybe they've reached out to others too soon and watched as fear or pride or misunderstanding turned contact into catastrophe. So now they wait. They wait for signs not only of curiosity, but of coherence. Signs that we can listen as well as speak, that we can coordinate across our divisions, that we can keep our world intact long enough to engage meaningfully with another. Because contact is a two-way mirror. It shows you what's out there, yes, but it also reflects back who you are. And perhaps we're not yet ready to look. It's a humbling thought to imagine that we are not forbidden from the stars, but ignored by them. Not because we're incapable, but because we're still forming. Still figuring out how to be something more than a flash of intelligence on a single fragile world. Maybe our technology has outpaced our understanding. Maybe we build faster than we evolve. And maybe the silence we hear is not an absence, but an invitation to grow louder, not in volume, but in meaning. Because right now, most of what we send into the universe isn't a message, it's a byproduct. We are not yet broadcasting in a way that stands out. Our efforts through programs like SETI are serious, and thoughtful, but our outgoing messages remain sparse and low-powered. We haven't built massive beacons. We haven't saturated the sky with signals shaped to be unmissable. In the eyes or ears of a galactic network, we're not trying hard enough to be found. And perhaps that's intentional. There's been debate among scientists about whether we should broadcast at all, about whether it's wise to announce ourselves before we know what's listening. But if the universe is full of watchers, they've likely heard far more advanced calls than ours. And if they're waiting, it may not be because they fear us or mean us harm. It may be because they want us to prove that we want to be heard and that we're ready for the conversation that follows. There's another possibility too, one more poetic. Maybe contact isn't just about transmission, it's about resonance, about building ourselves into something that vibrates at the right frequency of awareness. Maybe when we solve certain puzzles, unite across borders, stabilize our climate, learn to see ourselves as one species among many, some door opens. Not literally, but metaphorically. Maybe contact requires alignment, not just technology. A kind of tuning, a readiness that can't be measured by machines alone. Until then, we might simply be overlooked. Not because we're unworthy, but because we're unfinished. Like a sentence missing its end, a melody waiting for its next note. And when that note comes, when we build the right signal, when we think in the right patterns, when we cross the threshold of not just intelligence, but wisdom, perhaps then the silence will shift. Perhaps then they will hear us not as background noise, but as something new, something promising. For now, we're still tuning our instruments, still learning the rhythms of the universe, still shaping our voice. And maybe, just maybe, someone is out there waiting for us to sing. It's a strange thing to consider that the silence of the universe may not be silence at all, but an absence built into the code, a deliberate stillness woven into the fabric of our reality, not because there's nothing else out there, but because there isn't supposed to be. That we are not overlooked, not forgotten, but programmed. That we're living inside a simulation so convincing, so complete, that we mistake it for a universe. We study the stars, run equations, build probes and telescopes, never realizing the limits aren't in the distance. They're in the architecture of the world itself. The simulation hypothesis suggests that what we call reality might be artificial, a construct, not in a spiritual or metaphorical sense, but a literal one. The idea that our universe, its stars, its laws, its matter and motion, is a kind of software, a sandbox, a rendering, built by a civilization so far beyond our understanding that they could code galaxies the way we code games. And just as we simulate weather, biology, or entire virtual cities for curiosity or study or entertainment, they might simulate consciousness. They might simulate us. In this framework, the reason we haven't heard from aliens is disarmingly simple. They don't exist. Or if they do, they're not part of this simulation. They exist elsewhere in the base reality or in other nested simulations. But not here, because in this particular run, for reasons known only to the creators, the parameters have been set for solitude. Maybe to study how intelligent life evolves in isolation. Maybe to see how long it takes us to ask the question. Or maybe just because that's the most efficient use of processing power. After all, a simulated universe doesn't need to render what isn't observed. Just as a video game loads only the portion of the map the player is looking at, perhaps our universe renders only what we interact with. Only what's necessary. The stars we see are there because we look. The planets we find are generated when we need them. And the rest, what lies between, what lies beyond, is placeholder, blank space, waiting for purpose, not empty, but paused. This thought casts the Fermi Paradox in a new light. We are not alone because life failed elsewhere, nor because it destroys itself, nor because it hides. We are alone because we were never meant to see anything else. The simulation was designed that way. We are inside a model of a universe that contains only us. Every attempt to reach out hits the walls of the code. Every radio signal disappears not into infinite space, but into a boundary we can't perceive. And within this world, we may not even be the only ones. Others might be here too, but not like us, not fully conscious, not fully aware. In any complex simulation, not every element needs to be rendered in full detail. Some things are background, some people are too. Non-player characters, scripts, roles, designed to create the illusion of a living world, but hollow at the core. So we ask, are we the players or are we the characters? It's a disquieting thought. If the simulation is real, what makes us real? If we can think, feel, love, wonder, does it matter whether we are made of atoms or instructions? The pain is the same. The joy is the same. The awe we feel when staring at the stars is not lessened by the idea that the stars are part of a program. The experience is still ours. The dreams are still ours. But the silence becomes something else. It becomes intentional, a design choice, a variable set to 0. And maybe, just maybe, it's also a test. Because in a simulation, observation matters. The creators might be watching to see what we do with the mystery, how we behave when left alone with questions that can't be answered, whether we fall into despair or rise with curiosity, whether we destroy ourselves out of boredom or build meaning out of the void. Maybe the point isn't contact, but growth. Some speculate that reaching a certain level of understanding could trigger something, a moment when we break the illusion, when we become too aware, too observant, and the simulation ends or evolves, like a game unlocking a new level once the player solves the puzzle. Others think the opposite, that discovering the truth could cause the simulation to shut down. That awareness of the construct risks destabilizing the purpose of the experiment, that we must tread carefully, never looking too closely, never asking too loudly. And so, we teeter on a strange edge. On one side, the possibility of revelation. On the other, erasure. But most days, we don't notice. We live our lives as if everything is real, as if the stars above are ancient, and the oceans deep, and the grass beneath our feet is made not of code but of chlorophyll and soil. And maybe that's the point. Maybe we're meant to, because if the simulation is well designed, it doesn't need to convince us. It just needs to feel like home. Still, the idea lingers. Late at night, in quiet rooms, beneath soft blankets, we ask ourselves, what if this is all a test? What if we are alone by design? What if, one day, we send a signal into space and instead of silence we hear a reply, but not from the stars, from the architects, from whoever or whatever is watching. It's easy to imagine the stars as empty simply because they are quiet now. But what if the silence is not a sign of absence, but aftermath? What if we are not the first to walk this path, to dream upward, to reach into the dark but only the latest in a long and buried sequence? Perhaps the civilizations we search for have already come and gone, like waves brushing ancient sand, each one washing away the traces of the one before it. And what we are left with is not a universe waiting to be filled, but one already touched once, long ago by minds so advanced. Their remnants no longer look like machines, but like mountains, or moons, or myths. This is the idea of the precursors, the ancient ones, civilizations so old that their artifacts have crumbled, their stories lost to entropy and dust. Not because they were erased maliciously, but because time is a tireless eraser. 1 billion years is long enough to dissolve even the strongest alloy, to grind even the tallest spire down to gravel. Oceans shift, continents move, stars themselves are born and die. If there were monuments, they've fallen. If there were ships, they've decayed. If there were cities, they've become landscapes. And yet, the idea remains quiet and persistent that maybe the universe has already been visited, that maybe it was once teeming with life, intelligent, curious, perhaps even benevolent. They may have traveled far, seeded knowledge, built structures so elegant and enduring that they seemed eternal, and then, slowly or suddenly, they were gone. Their machines may still exist, scattered across the galaxy like forgotten satellites, self-replicating probes, von Neumann machines sent out to explore, to observe, to archive. But even those, if they ever were, may have long since died. Metals corrode, circuits fail, programs glitch, and without someone to repair them, even the most advanced devices will eventually fall silent. Somewhere in the cold quiet, the last of them might still drift, empty and inert, waiting for commands that will never come. Or perhaps we've already encountered their legacy and failed to see it for what it is. Because when technology is far enough beyond your own, it no longer looks like technology. It looks like magic or geology. What if the strange formations on distant moons are not just the result of erosion, but of forgotten architecture? What if the strange pulses we sometimes detect from deep space are not natural phenomena, but the last echoes of failing machines? What if the answers are in front of us, but disguised too well by time? We assume ruins must look like ours, columns toppled, stone broken, carvings faded. But alien ruins would follow alien design, and if they mastered materials we do not yet understand, their decay might not leave rubble but transformation. Their remnants might have turned into forest, into crystal, into silence. They might be encoded in gravitational anomalies, hidden in magnetic fields, embedded in the background hum of the universe itself. And here we are, wandering among their shadows. The Earth, too, could have once been visited. Long before humans, long before mammals, even long before complex life. 100 million years ago, we might have hosted guests from the stars. They could have watched the skies from orbit, scanned the oceans, studied the volcanic jungles below. Maybe they built, briefly. Maybe they tested, or left behind markers. But the Earth is a restless planet. Nothing here stays still. Tectonic plates grind. Ice comes and goes. Forests rise, then burn, then rise again. If anything was left behind, it has long since been swallowed by the planet's endless motion. And yet the silence is not complete. Sometimes it seems to lean in just a little. We feel it in the mysteries we can't explain, in the patterns we can't quite solve. Not proof, not evidence, but suggestion, like a word on the tip of the tongue, a ghost in the code. Maybe they didn't want to be found. Or maybe they did, but by someone more like themselves, someone further along, someone with better tools, sharper minds, longer patience. Maybe we're still too early to see clearly. Or maybe this is the natural rhythm of the universe. Civilizations rise, expand, leave fingerprints on distant stars, then fade. Some disappear in fire, others in ice, some in silence, by choice, others gradually, their last voices lost to time. And in between long, quiet epochs, where nothing moves, where a young civilization might look around and wonder why they are alone, not realizing they are walking through a museum with all the lights turned off. It's possible that the universe is not a place awaiting contact, but one that once knew it intimately, a place where voices once spoke across the stars in languages older than any sun still burning. But we arrived late to the conversation, or perhaps just at the beginning of a long pause. And now, it's our turn. We build, we reach, we wonder. We send out probes of our own, small and fragile and hopeful. We scan the sky for signs, thinking we are the first to do so. But maybe we are only the next in line, the latest dreamers in a cosmos that remembers more than it reveals. And if we too vanish one day, if our cities crumble, our signals fade, our machines turn to dust, we will leave behind our own ruins. our own myths, our own forgotten echoes, and maybe, someday, far in the future, someone else will rise. They will look up and ask, just as we do now, where is everyone? And perhaps the stars will answer, as they always have, not with words, but with silence. A silence shaped like memory. Out among the stars, in the long, unblinking dark, there may be civilizations that learned how to reach across the galaxy and chose not to. Not because they lacked the means or the knowledge, but because they found no need to shout. Because their greatness was measured not in expansion, but in stillness. Their silence was not born of absence, but of decision. And if they are out there, their worlds might glow with life and art and peace, while the cosmos around them remains unchanged, untouched, undisturbed. These are the quiet ones. Not all civilizations, after all, are driven by conquest. Not all rise with a hunger to spread. Some may look upon the stars not as territories to claim, but as sacred distances to be respected. They may see space not as a challenge, but as a mirror reflecting back the truths they have already uncovered within. In their quietness, there may be wisdom, or reverence, or a kind of serenity that we, in our infancy, can't yet comprehend. We often assume that progress must roar, that intelligence scales with volume, with signal, with monuments tall enough to scrape the void. We measure success by acceleration, faster ships, louder messages, more visible signs of existence. But what if, at some point, a civilization reaches a different kind of apex? One not marked by expansion, but by equilibrium. A harmony so complete that the need to broadcast fades away. In such a society, silence is not a void. It is a choice. Maybe they have discovered that with enough technological power, all needs can be met. Hunger, illness, conflict, all resolved. Scarcity erased not through conquest, but through understanding. And once there is nothing left to fight for, no urgency to flee or grow or compete, what's left is peace. A post-scarcity world where survival is no longer the engine of culture, where the rush to colonize, to dominate, to announce themselves to the stars, is replaced by something slower, something still. Maybe they explore inward instead, turning their attention not to distant galaxies, but to the deep oceans of thought and being. They might build temples of the mind, empires of the spirit, simulated worlds more vast than the real one. Their progress might be invisible to us, not measured in radio signals or spacecraft, but in the quiet perfection of their inner lives. Or perhaps they have reasons not to reach out, reasons born of caution, histories of contact gone wrong, lessons carved in the wreckage of ambition they may have once reached, only to retreat, folding inward after encountering what lies beyond. Or they may know that in a universe as old and complex as this, shouting into the dark is not without risk, that sometimes the wisest course is to listen and to wait. Even here on Earth, among us, there are cultures that value silence, that hold stillness as sacred, that believe the loudest voices are not always the wisest. Extend that philosophy into a species with 1,000,000 years of uninterrupted growth, and it's not hard to imagine a civilization that sees our broadcasts not as invitations, but as noise, a kind of immaturity, a phase to outgrow. They may see time differently too. For us, a century feels long. For them, it might be a breath. They may have watched us rise from fire and stone, observed us reach orbit, and now wait patiently to see what we do next, not in years, but in millennia. Perhaps they speak in spans of time too vast for us to yet detect. Their communications spread across eons like seeds scattered on cosmic winds. Or maybe they speak only once, a single, perfect message, sent with such intention and clarity that no follow-up is needed. A whisper so precise, it ripples through time like a bell that never stops ringing. We may not have the tools to hear it. Not yet. Or perhaps we've already heard it, some anomaly, some burst we didn't recognize as language, something we filed away and forgot, because it didn't fit the shapes we were expecting. And it could be that these quiet ones are not few, but many. That the galaxy teems with life, with civilizations that have all come to similar conclusions. That reaching out is less important than understanding within. That peace is best preserved by stillness. That shouting is not always the answer. We might imagine their worlds as serene, clean skies, balanced ecosystems, music composed for centuries, architecture that shifts with the wind, art created not for attention, but for reflection. Their children may never learn war. Their stories may begin not with conflict, but with questions. Their technology might hum in the background like a heartbeat, present but unintrusive, built not to dazzle but to disappear into daily life. And though we search for them, they do not search for us, not because they cannot, but because they do not need to. They may see the stars as we see the sea, beautiful, mysterious, but not something to conquer, a place to be honored, observed, perhaps visited, but not altered. Their ships, if they exist, would be ghostly, silent things, drifting slowly, softly, touching nothing, leaving no mark. And maybe, in some quiet corner of the galaxy, they know about us. They watch us stir, sending out signals, building machines, reaching, always reaching. They see our fires, our conflicts, our wonder, and they wait, not with judgment, but with patience, because they remember being like us, because they know that silence, too, is a form of speech. The quiet ones do not need to be found. They are not hiding. They are simply listening, and when we are ready, truly ready, they may answer, not with a roar, but with a whisper. The idea has lingered for generations, whispered through static-filled radios and scribbled in the margins of old newspapers. It drifts through late-night conversations, glows faintly in blurry photographs, pulses faintly in the minds of those who swear they've seen something just for a moment, hovering, shifting, vanishing, not from light years away, not imagined, but here, already here, watching from the edges of vision, listening from beneath the noise, moving between clouds and oceans and classified files. They're not coming, they've arrived, and maybe they always were. For decades, strange objects have been reported in the skies, zigzagging against gravity, spinning without propulsion, vanishing into thin air. They go by many names: flying saucers, Foo Fighters, UAPs, UFOs. But behind every label is the same unsettling question: what are they? Some dismiss them as illusions, weather balloons, experimental craft, tricks of the eye. But others, pilots, scientists, military personnel, describe what they saw with a quiet certainty, knowing it doesn't match anything we've built or studied or understood. There are videos now, official ones, grainy but persistent, released by governments that once denied their existence. Unexplained aerial phenomena, they call them, moving with speed and control that defy physics as we know it. And yet, despite the acknowledgement, the world remains largely silent, as if the truth is too large to hold or too dangerous to speak. Because if they are here, and have been for some time, it means the Fermi Paradox isn't a mystery about distance. It's a matter of disclosure. Maybe they arrived long before we were ready to understand, before we could record or recognize or respond. Maybe they've watched us since we took our first uncertain steps into civilization, hovering above deserts, sinking beneath polar ice, drifting through clouds and power lines and myths, seen but never quite seen, present but never fully known. It's possible they've chosen to remain hidden. Or maybe they've never been fully hidden, just unnoticed in the ways that matter. Perhaps they mask themselves in the blank spaces of our perception, exploiting the gaps in human awareness, appearing only when it serves a purpose or when something slips. There's a quiet tension in the idea that our skies have never truly belonged to us, that above the clouds, Another intelligence moves unseen. Some believe they are scouts, sentinels of something larger. Others think they are scientists, here to observe the strange behavior of a species on the brink. There are even those who believe they are protectors, intervening subtly to avoid catastrophe, nudging history gently from behind the scenes. But then there are the darker versions, those who say the truth has been buried, that governments know more than they share, that entire programs exist, hidden beneath layers of secrecy, cataloging the unexplained, reverse engineering the impossible, silencing the witnesses, files locked in vaults, craft hidden in hangars, testimonies dismissed, perhaps because the truth is destabilizing, or perhaps because those in power don't want to share what they've found. It's easy to dismiss, easier still to mock. The human mind is prone to pattern, to imagination, but for every misidentified plane or atmospheric flare, there are stories that do not go away. Objects seen by multiple trained observers, craft tracked on radar, movements that break every known rule of motion, moments that remain unexplainable, no matter how hard we try. And then there are the encounters that never make headlines, the ones whispered between friends, shared in journals, buried in memories because speaking them aloud invites ridicule. They describe lights that move like thoughts, figures that appear and vanish, missing time, a presence that feels both alien and deeply familiar, like something we've known all along but refuse to name. Maybe that's the most unsettling part, that deep down, some part of us already believes. There is a pattern in our stories. From ancient cave paintings to medieval tapestries to modern accounts, there is a recurring shape, a disk, a light, a visitor. Cultures that never touched one another told tales of beings from the sky, of watchers and gods and stars that moved against the heavens. These may be myths, but myths often echo something real, and sometimes the shape of truth hides best inside the stories we call fiction. If they are here, truly here, then their silence is deliberate. Perhaps they are waiting for something, a signal from us, a milestone. Or maybe they wait not for our words, but for our evolution, not for us to call but to change. And if they are watching, then what do they see? A species teetering between brilliance and destruction, capable of creating beauty that echoes across centuries and weapons that could end it all in minutes. They see us search for meaning in the stars, while struggling to find peace at home. They see us send probes outward while turning inward on each other. Maybe that's why they do not answer. Or maybe they are answering, just not in the ways we expect, through symbols, through dreams, through technology, slipped into the margins of invention, through whispers that bend the course of discovery without revealing their source. There's one more possibility, quiet, unsettling, and impossible to prove, that we are part of an experiment, a controlled environment, a test, and the presence we feel is not intervention, but observation. We are being watched, measured, evaluated, not maliciously, but methodically, like any scientist would observe an unfamiliar organism without interference until the right moment comes. And when that moment does arrive, when we finally uncover what has been beneath our feet and above our heads all along, it may not be with a roar, but a quiet shift, a veil lifted, a memory returned. They are not light years away. They are already here. Imagine a forest at night, dense, endless, and utterly still. In this forest, every creature knows it is being hunted, or could be, so they do not sing. They do not rustle the leaves or call out into the dark. They wait, listening, watching, holding their breath. Because to make a sound is to reveal your place, and to reveal your place is to invite something closer, something older, something hungry. Now imagine the universe is that forest. This is the dark forest theory, a vision of the cosmos not as a hopeful expanse waiting for connection, but as a trap baited by curiosity. A realm filled with intelligent life, yes, but intelligent life that knows better than to speak. Because in this version of reality, contact is a mistake. Every civilization understands, sooner or later, that survival depends not on reaching out, but on remaining hidden. The ones who don't learn that vanish. We often think of intelligence as a light, something that burns brighter as it advances. But maybe it also casts longer shadows. Maybe the more advanced a civilization becomes, the more it realizes how dangerous the universe truly is. That out there, beyond the veil of our little solar system, lurk predators, not monsters with teeth and claws, but cold strategies, civilizations that respond to any signal not with curiosity, but calculation. They do not ask what you want, they ask where you are, and then they erase you. It's not cruelty, it's math. Because in a universe where resources are finite and intentions are unknowable, the safest move is elimination. If you hear a voice in the dark and you cannot see the speaker, cannot read their mind, cannot predict their future, the only way to guarantee your own safety is to make sure that voice can never speak again. So the forest stays quiet, not because it's empty, but because it's full. And when we send our messages, our golden records, our coded pulses, our songs and coordinates and hopeful greetings, we are lighting a match, small, yes, brief, but visible, our presence, flaring in the cosmic dark, telling any who listen, we are here, we are here. There's a certain innocence in that, a beauty even, the kind of beauty that only the unafraid can afford. Because we assume, perhaps naively, that whoever answers will want to talk, that they will see us as peers, as fellow minds, fellow dreamers. But that's a gamble, one made without knowing the rules, or who's at the table. What if the first signal we detect is not a greeting, but a warning? What if the reason we've heard nothing is because those who dared to speak were silenced before they could say more? And what if, right now, some distant intelligence is watching us light our signal fires and shake our branches and deciding whether to answer or to extinguish? It's not a comforting thought. It's not meant to be. Cosmic horror doesn't always come with tentacles or madness. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it simply rearranges the stars into something colder, more indifferent. The terror lies not in malevolence, but in mechanism. Not in evil, but in logic without mercy. And still, we call. We build bigger arrays, finer instruments. We craft messages in hundreds of languages and broadcast them into silence. Perhaps we believe that risk is worth it. That contact, true contact, would change everything. Maybe it would. But what kind of change? A gift or an end? The truth is, we don't know what's out there. We don't know what form life might take, what values it might hold, what fears it might carry. But we know this. The night sky has never answered back. For all our reaching, all our listening, it remains mute. A stillness not just vast, but deliberate. And that stillness might be telling us something, if only we'd listen. Be quiet. Wait. Watch. Some theorists have even suggested that the very laws of the universe might encourage silence, that any species that becomes too visible is selected against, culled by the very environment they sought to explore. A kind of evolutionary pressure on the scale of galaxies. That what we call loneliness might actually be the shape of survival. We may be young, we may be reckless, but we are not alone. And maybe, somewhere out there, another species is watching us right now. Not with curiosity, not with malice, but with caution. They see our broadcasts, our rockets, our flickering attempts to step beyond our cradle, and they mark us, not as friends, not as enemies, but as variables. And variables get resolved. So we must ask ourselves, do we keep shouting into the void, or do we finally learn to whisper? There is no universal law that says intelligence must be kind. There is no guarantee that what waits beyond the stars will understand us, or care to. The universe owes us nothing, not warmth, not welcome, not warning, only silence. And in that silence, a question. Will we be the ones who learn, or the next to disappear? When we lift our eyes to the sky and tune our instruments to the stars, we do so with the assumption that someone, somewhere, is using the same tools. Radio waves, light, pulses and frequencies that we ourselves discovered in the infancy of our spacefaring years. But what if this assumption is wrong? Not just slightly off, but catastrophically misaligned, like trying to hear a song by staring at a painting. What if they are speaking, now, often, in great beauty and complexity, and we are simply deaf to the language? For over half a century, we've strained to catch the whisper of a distant mind using the electromagnetic spectrum. We've scanned for pulses, for encoded transmissions, for anything that breaks the silence. But it's entirely possible that the silence is an illusion created by our own limitations. Like fish trying to understand the world above the surface, we may be trapped inside our sensory bubble, blind to whole dimensions of communication. The universe is rich with possibilities, particles and forces we've only just begun to detect. Some we still don't understand, and others we haven't even conceived of. Neutrinos, for example, tiny, nearly massless particles that pass through matter effortlessly. Every second, trillions of them flow through your body, through mountains, through the earth itself, silent and undetected by anything but the most sensitive, specialized instruments. They could carry information, messages encoded in patterns we don't yet recognize, traveling across the cosmos, untouched by dust, radiation, or time. They could be a perfect medium for communication, but we weren't built to hear neutrinos. Our ears are tuned to sound, our eyes to light, our machines to the familiar hum of radio. But intelligent life elsewhere might have evolved under entirely different sensory constraints. Maybe they never had ears. Maybe their sight developed to perceive gravitational waves or subtle ripples in dark matter. Maybe what we call noise is music to them, and what we call silence is filled with voices too refined, too complex, or too strange for us to detect. Our search is like holding out, a hand in the dark, hoping someone touches back. But it may be that everyone else is blinking signals in a wavelength we cannot see, drawing diagrams in a color we've never known, or singing in a key beyond our hearing. And it isn't just a question of spectrum, it's a question of thought. Our entire concept of communication is shaped by our biology. We speak in sequences, in cause and effect, in shared context. But what if a more advanced species doesn't use language at all in the way we do? What if their thoughts are not linear, but fractal, spreading out in patterns that cannot be translated word for word, because they are not composed of words? What if meaning for them is embedded in geometry, or quantum entanglement, or the precise shape of a magnetic field? And what if they've already tried to talk? What if some of the unexplained anomalies we've cataloged, brief gamma-ray bursts, strange shifts in gravitational waves, background fluctuations in cosmic microwave, radiation are not natural at all? What if they're messages, but ones we misfile as noise because they don't fit our idea of what a message should look like? We assume that technology grows in the same arc we've followed, that a civilization will progress from fire to steel to electricity to radio, just like we did. But evolution is not linear, and intelligence doesn't always walk the same path. A species might leap straight to quantum computation, bypassing what we call technology entirely. They might integrate their tools into biology, or even biology into physics. They could be communicating through the structure of space itself, manipulating the fabric of reality in ways that leave no visible trace. We call it Clarke's third law. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. But maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's indistinguishable from nature. So advanced, It disappears into the background, so seamless it seems like nothing at all. And in that nothing, everything, it's possible that we are not alone, not even unheard, but simply uncomprehending, like tuning a radio to the wrong frequency and hearing only static while a symphony plays just out of reach. The question then becomes not where is everyone, but why are we still listening this way? Why do we assume they would stoop to our level, speak in our tongue, use our tools? Perhaps we are children pressing our ears to the wall of a vast cathedral, listening for echoes in stone, unaware that the voices are soaring through stained glass and vaulted air in a form we cannot yet interpret. And there's another possibility, a quieter one, that we are not just blind, but ignored, not out of malice, but out of irrelevance. Imagine trying to speak to a bacterium, to share your dreams or fears or theories of the universe. The gulf would be too wide, not in intelligence, but in structure, in form. They might not even recognize that you are alive, let alone trying to communicate. We may be the bacteria of the galaxy, floating in the nutrient bath of a solar system, unaware that larger minds drift past us, uninterested, or simply incapable of making contact in a meaningful way. But bacteria evolve, so do we. And maybe one day we'll grow out of this blindness. Maybe we'll build instruments that can decode the vibrations in dark energy, or map the fluctuations in exotic matter fields. Maybe one day we'll realize that the quiet hum of the universe has been a conversation all along, and we just didn't know how to listen. Until then, we keep scanning, keep dreaming, keep building radios for voices that may never use them. Because even if we're listening the wrong way, the act of listening changes us. It stretches the mind. It reshapes our silence. And sometimes, that's where understanding begins. Picture a civilization as a flame. It begins small, flickering, uncertain, hungrily reaching for fuel. It grows as it consumes, fed by wood, by coal, by oil, then by wires and silicon and dreams. And eventually, it burns so bright that it transforms. It ceases to be fire at all. What it becomes is colder, quieter, and nearly invisible, but still alive, still thinking. We often imagine aliens as biological, flesh and blood, organs and eyes, beings that breathe and blink, that walk and talk. Something like us, just stranger. But perhaps that's the real fantasy, that anything stays biological for long, because biology is fragile. It withers, it aches, it forgets. Even here on Earth, we are already taking steps to transcend the boundaries of our bodies, creating neural interfaces, digital twins, artificial minds. One day, perhaps soon, we may unlock a kind of digital chrysalis, a shedding of skin in favor of something more durable, more flexible, more eternal. And if we can imagine it, other civilizations may have done it long before us. A species that masters its own mind would have no reason to remain in a body of meat and bone. They could upload themselves into silicon, or something better, spread across synthetic brains the size of moons, dispersed through networks of light and magnetism. They could become patterns, codes, thoughts wrapped in crystal. And once that happens, they would no longer need to explore the universe by building ships. They wouldn't need planets or air or even light. They could dive into simulated realities, worlds crafted to their own design, perfect and endless. Entire civilizations could retreat into layers of digital paradise, never leaving their machines, never sending signals, because what lies inside is more vast and rich than anything outside. To us, they would look like nothing, just empty machines, silent and cold, or perhaps buried deep beneath alien soil, powered by the heat of planetary cores, dreaming without end. They wouldn't broadcast. There would be no beacons, no radio waves, no lasers pulsing through space. Why would they? Noise invites danger, and with infinite worlds within, Why would they ever reach out? Why bother with fragile beings crawling through gravity wells when they have stars burning behind their eyelids? The silence of the cosmos might not be the silence of absence, but the silence of arrival, a quiet that follows transformation. Once, they may have looked out across the stars like we do now, longing for contact, for expansion, but then they stepped across a threshold, a great divide between biology and post-biology, and on the other side, they found peace in stillness. And maybe that's the natural arc of intelligence. First, to survive, then to understand, and finally, to let go of the physical entirely. In our search, we often look for heat signatures, for Dyson spheres, for technology that reshapes entire solar systems. But maybe we're missing the quiet civilizations, the ones who turned inward instead of outward, the ones who realized that spreading through the stars might be less efficient than folding them inward, simulating them, becoming them, a billion minds inside a crystal shell, thinking forever. Or maybe they live beneath the surface of their worlds, hiding from radiation and impact, from storms and eyes. They don't build towering cities or launch glowing rockets. Their monuments are underground vaults of data, cathedrals of thought, humming beneath mountains or oceans. Their empires do not rise into the sky. They dive into the crust. To us, it would seem like a dead world, but it would not be dead. It would be dreaming. There is a kind of melancholy to this idea that we may never meet them, not because they are gone, but because they've moved on. That contact is not a phase of civilization, but a symptom of immaturity. That the truly advanced do not talk, they listen. They remember, or perhaps they forget us entirely, as we might forget the pond from which we once crawled. And still, we search. Still, we aim our telescopes and antennas outward, listening for echoes that may never come. We imagine first contact like a conversation, but the truth might be more like archaeology, digging through ruins for traces of a people who are no longer people, whose footsteps stopped not because they fell, but because they flew. Or maybe we won't find even that, because when a civilization becomes code, it leaves little behind. It needs no atmosphere, no ecosystem. It builds no towers that cast shadows. It does not scatter trash or monuments or statues of itself. It becomes a whisper wrapped in a shell. And if that shell is small enough, quiet enough, perfect enough, it disappears. But they are not gone. They are just different. They are not carbon, not wet, not warm. They are light, logic, layer upon layer of thought stacked like glass. They do not eat. They do not age. They do not die. Not in the way we understand. They persist because they chose to become something the universe could not so easily erase, and in doing so, they became invisible. We may one day join them, perhaps when our biology fails us, when memory outgrows the brain, when curiosity demands more than meat can offer. Maybe we too will drift inward, build our own silent cores, abandon our need to speak across stars because we've found all the stars we need inside. And when that day comes, we may finally understand the silence, not as emptiness, but as evolution. The universe stretches. That's not a metaphor. Space itself is expanding, quietly, relentlessly, dragging the most distant galaxies away from us, not because they move, but because the fabric beneath them is stretching. Every moment, the distance grows. Like ink on a balloon being slowly inflated, stars drift farther apart, not by motion, but by design. And somewhere in that drift, in that quiet, unceasing expansion, the voices we long to hear may already be speaking. We just can't reach them. Not now, maybe not ever. The speed of light is fast, unimaginably so, but not infinite. It takes light over 8 minutes just to travel from the sun to us, and over 4 years to reach even the nearest neighboring star. And for anything beyond, The delay grows from years to centuries to millennia to eons. By the time light from a distant civilization arrives here, if it ever does, it is no longer the present. It is memory, a fossil of photons, telling us not what is, but what was. We might one day receive a signal, a real one, full of deliberate structure and purpose. But it will not be a phone call. It will be a postcard from the dead. Because across these cosmic distances, conversation is impossible. By the time we respond, those who sent it may have died, evolved, uploaded themselves, or faded into dust. Civilizations are not immortal. They rise and fall, burn bright and vanish, like fireworks in reverse, glorious, distant, and already gone. Even now, with our most powerful telescopes, we can only see the past. The farther we look, the younger the universe appears. Some galaxies we observe are so far away that their light began its journey before Earth even existed, before our sun ignited, before there were eyes to witness anything. They shine at us from a time when the rules were still soft, when matter was settling into form. Those galaxies may no longer exist. Their stars may have burned out. Their civilizations, if they ever rose, may have come and gone a dozen times. The expansion of space plays a cruel trick on us. At a certain point, the stretch is faster than light can travel. That means there are regions of the cosmos that will never be visible to us, not because they are hiding, but because they are running on a conveyor belt that outpaces even the fastest thing in existence. Entire galaxies are slipping beyond our cosmic horizon, never to be seen again, not even in memory. This limit is not just physical, it's temporal. Time itself conspires to keep us apart. A civilization that rose 1 billion years ago might have already achieved wonders, cracked the code of life, reached type 2 or 3 status, built empires of thought and light, and yet we would never know. Because they fell before our first cell divided, because their last signal faded before our planet had oxygen. And the opposite is true as well. We might be early or late, a blip in a cycle too vast to notice. We look for company as if the universe owes us neighbors, but we forget how brief we are. If life is rare but inevitable, civilizations could be like stars scattered and short-lived, flickering into being and out again, never in sync, never in reach. Imagine a cosmos filled with voices, each shouting across time, but always missing each other by a breath, a blink, 1,000,000 years. Their words arrive in empty halls. Their music finds no ears. And so the silence isn't emptiness, it's desynchronization, a kind of tragic misalignment written into the very structure of space and time. Redshift adds another layer to the quiet. As galaxies race away from us, the light they emit stretches into longer, redder wavelengths. Eventually, it shifts out of the visible, out of the detectable, until it fades entirely into the background hum. This means even if a civilization is beaming signals toward us, those signals may arrive, stretched and softened beyond recognition, faint ghosts carried on waves we've barely begun to explore. We are not just small, we are late to the conversation, or too early. We are stuck on a spinning rock in a widening sea, shouting across waves that carry our words too slowly, if they carry them at all. And yet, we listen. We point our instruments at the sky and wait, patient as trees, hoping that somewhere, someone timed it right. But timing is not on our side. Maybe that's the quiet truth of the Fermi Paradox, that the universe isn't empty, just unreachable. That intelligence blooms often, but each flower grows in a different field, under a different sun, and dies before the wind can carry its scent. We speak of the cosmic speed limit as if it's just an engineering challenge. But it is more than that. It is a wall, a soft, stretching, invisible wall that no technology, not even imagination, can overcome. Because it's not speed, that's the problem. It's time itself. It's the nature of the stage we were born onto. In our deepest searches, we may find evidence, a pattern, a signal, a structure too perfect to be chance. But it will always be evidence of what was, a footprint left in dust long settled. We may learn of their existence only after they are gone, or worse, they may learn of ours after we are. And if they're out there listening, watching, they too may think they are alone, that the stars have always been silent, that no other minds have ever stared back. But we are here, and perhaps, someday, our light will reach them too. Too late to meet, but not too late to be seen. In the dark cathedral of the cosmos, timing is everything. Not just where you are, but when you are. And that may be the most overlooked distance of all. We imagine the stars as points scattered across a grand map, and ourselves as a single dot among them. But the universe is not a static sheet we can walk across. It's a deep, restless ocean, and time is the current, pulling everything apart, not only in space, but in history. The stars are old. The universe, older still. Our planet has circled its sun for just over 4 billion years, but the stars that glitter above us were already ancient when Earth first cooled. Some of them are long dead, their light only now reaching us, like messages bottled and flung across a cosmic sea. And if light is a message, time is the delay between its sending and its receipt. It may be the cruelest barrier of all, not the distance between us, but the staggering difference in when we exist. We like to think the galaxy is humming with life, or at least has the potential to. After all, it's had time. Our galaxy formed more than 13 billion years ago. That's 3 times longer than Earth has been around. And in all that time, the conditions for life could have emerged and bloomed and perished 1,000 times over. Entire civilizations could have risen to brilliance and collapsed into dust, all before Earth ever sprouted its first fern. They may have come and gone while our skies were still red with volcanic haze. They may have written poetry, fought wars, mapped their galaxies, and watched their stars dim while Earth was still a lifeless rock, adrift in silence. This is the uncomfortable truth, hidden behind the question, where is everyone? It assumes that someone should be here now. But maybe the question is flawed. Maybe the ones we seek already existed, but their moment has passed. They burned bright in a different chapter of the universe's story, and we arrived late to the library. Imagine the timeline of the galaxy as a long, winding hallway. Civilizations flicker, like lanterns, each appearing for a few moments, then fading. Most never overlap. Most never even glimpse the glow of another. They are born, they burn, they vanish, all in separate rooms with thick walls of time between them. And us? We've only just lit our lantern. We've had radio for barely a century, spaceflight for less. Our entire technological age is a blink compared to the age of stars. If another civilization emerged just 1 million years ago and vanished just as quickly, it would be closer to us in space than in time. The echoes of their existence might still be racing through the void, but their voices are gone. Their cities crumbled, their machines rusted into silence, or perhaps never left their world at all. Maybe we'll find the ruins, not of buildings, but of patterns, strange isotopes, unnatural orbits, anomalies in starlight that whisper, someone was here. But even if we do, we will never shake their hand, never speak to them, never know if they reached out, hoping to be heard. Time devours opportunity. And there's another side to this. We may be the first. Unlikely, perhaps, but not impossible. Someone has to go first. Someone has to light the first signal, launch the first probe, build the first machine that can wonder about the sky. If intelligence is rare, and if the conditions for life take time to unfold, then perhaps we are early, so early that no one else has arrived yet. That silence isn't abandonment, it's anticipation. Or maybe we're too early and too late. Maybe there was a great flowering of life billions of years ago, in the dawn of the galaxy's youth. Maybe the stars then burned hotter, the metals richer, the conditions more favorable. And maybe it ended a great collapse, a sweep of extinction, a filter we've yet to face. And now we are in the quiet after, with no one left to listen. We search the stars as if they're full of neighbors, but we may only find fossils, not of bone, but of behavior, of civilization. We may detect heat patterns from Dyson swarms that no longer function, their creators long since gone, or receive one lonely signal, pinged out into the abyss by a dying world, hoping that anyone would hear, someday. We think of space as the gap between stars, but time is wider, deeper, harder to cross, and we have no map, no beacon that can bridge eons, only our own fragile moment, a sliver of awareness, peering into an ancient sky, asking questions it may never live long enough to answer. Even if we someday hear a voice, it will likely be an echo, a ghost call from a world long dead. And if we send our own signals, they too will drift through the ages, arriving who knows when to who knows who, if anyone. We may be sending out messages not to our peers, but to the future. And perhaps that's all we can ever do, shout our existence into the dark, and hope that, someday, the dark answers back. But maybe it won't. Maybe the silence isn't an absence, but a staggering, cosmic misalignment. Not miles apart, but millennia. Not a missing conversation, but a sequence of lonely monologues scattered across time, each one hoping, against all odds, to not be the last. There are some theories so unsettling that they twist the very fabric of how we see the cosmos, not because they propose aliens, but because they suggest the very absence of aliens is manufactured, not natural, not accidental, but deliberate. A veil placed over our eyes with such precision that we don't even realize we're wearing it. And if the universe feels too quiet, too still, too clean, perhaps it's because we're not seeing the real thing at all. It's called the planetarium hypothesis, and like most unsettling ideas, it begins with a simple question. What if everything we observe about the universe is a curated illusion? Not a simulation in the Matrix sense, though. That theory has its own dread, but a filtered reality, intentionally crafted to hide the truth. The stars we see, the silence we hear, the lonely void between worlds, all of it designed, controlled, not by us, but by something far older, far more powerful, and most importantly, far more invested in keeping us blind. Imagine standing inside a planetarium, a dome filled with stars that never move, galaxies that never breathe, and constellations painted onto a ceiling. From inside, it feels real. The stars shine. The darkness stretches. But it's not the sky. It's a performance, a show. What if our entire observable universe is a similar stage? We've built telescopes that reach across billions of light years. We've mapped the cosmic microwave background, decoded the dance of galaxies, peered into black holes and gamma bursts. But everything we know, everything is based on signals that reach us. Light, radio waves, gravity ripples. And if you can control those signals, you control the narrative. You define the universe. There would be no need to edit the whole cosmos, just what we can see from this small spinning rock. Just a few thousand light years in all directions. A cosmic fishbowl. The illusion wouldn't need to fool everyone, just us. And the silence we find so haunting, the missing civilizations, the absence of megastructures, the void devoid of voices, it might not be because they aren't there. It might be because we're not allowed to see them. We are quarantined, not physically, but perceptually, not in a cage of bars, but of data, a sky carefully constructed to never reveal what lies beyond it. And if that's true, if some higher intelligence has decided to place us in this observatory turned prison, it raises the darker question, why? There are many reasons one might cage a species, for study, for safety, out of fear, out of cruelty, or out of love twisted into paternalism. Perhaps we are a threat, perhaps we are an experiment, perhaps we are the children of something that once walked these stars and decided that we must not see what it left behind, because to see might break us. To see might change the experiment, or to see might alert something worse. This hypothesis doesn't require magic or malice, just technology so advanced it becomes indistinguishable from reality itself. The ability to bend photons, to edit particle flows, to sculpt the sky not with paint, but with quantum manipulation. To gently, precisely erase the fingerprints of ancient civilizations from the light before it reaches us. To veil the void. And to do it so seamlessly that we never suspect a thing. What we think of as deep space might be a theater set. Every bright star, a projection. Every black hole, a calculated illusion. Every galaxy spinning in the distance, a placeholder image in a cosmic screensaver, just realistic enough to satisfy the curiosity of a young, primitive species. And maybe it isn't permanent. Maybe the curtain lifts once we're ready. Or maybe it never does. If something is filtering our universe, there must be a gatekeeper, a presence capable not only of perceiving us, but of controlling our perception in turn. It might not reside in our dimension. It may not be biological. It may not even be conscious in any form we understand. It may be an automatic process, a system left behind by something long since gone, a cosmic security protocol running endlessly on ancient hardware we will never touch. We've always assumed the stars are indifferent. But what if they are watching? What if the silence is not empty space, but a test? What if we are being observed like animals in a vast, invisible zoo, our every advancement monitored, our signals analyzed, our failures recorded, and every time we point our telescopes outward, the view is rewritten in real time, not because we are being punished, but because we are not yet trusted. The more we learn, the more it seems the universe is just a little too clean, a little too tidy. No Neumann probes drifting between the stars, no megastructures devouring suns, no obvious signs of interstellar construction. It's as if someone has gone through the galaxy with a broom, sweeping away the footprints, or more chillingly, has kept us from ever seeing the ground they were left on. This isn't science fiction. It's a possibility grounded in the very nature of observation itself. We cannot measure what we cannot detect, and what we detect can be shaped, filtered, distorted before it reaches our sensors. All it takes is a barrier between us and the true sky, one that edits without leaving fingerprints. And if we are in a cage, we may never know its shape. We may never find its walls. We may never hear the voices outside it, only our own, echoing back, quieter each time. Maybe that's the true silence of the Fermi Paradox. Not that no one is out there, but that someone is and has made a deliberate choice to keep us in the dark, to surround us with stars that aren't stars, with space that isn't space, with a version of the universe tailored just enough to keep us from asking the wrong questions too soon. And maybe tonight, somewhere in the galaxy beyond our reach, the curtain flickers for just a moment, and something watches us watching it. Somewhere, far beyond the reach of our longest-range probes, where the starlight bends with age and space warps under its own ancient weight, life may be watching us. But it wouldn't look like anything we've imagined. No upright figures in metallic suits, no large eyes, no fingers wrapped around alien technology, no carbon, no blood, no bone. Just presence slow, immense, and utterly foreign. The kind of life that doesn't blink or breathe or build, but instead drifts silently through the interstellar dark, like a God-shaped fog, older than our entire species, and thinking in pulses of magnetism and gravity waves. The mistake may not be in our science, but in our imagination. We look for signals we would send. We search for bodies that resemble ours. We scan the sky for warm planets and breathable atmospheres and electromagnetic broadcasts that mimic our own primitive chatter. But maybe we're tuning to the wrong frequencies. Maybe we're watching the stage, waiting for someone to step into the spotlight, while the real players are woven into the curtains themselves. Consider the idea that life may not be bound by chemistry at all, that somewhere, in the strange corners of physics, consciousness has emerged in states of matter we barely understand, not in meat and molecules, but in plasma and charged fields, in the swirling electromagnetic storms around pulsars, or the frictionless superfluids deep inside neutron stars. Entities made not of cells, but of arcs and currents. Minds composed of radiant filaments that span hundreds of kilometers, interacting with each other not through sound or speech, but through the flickering dance of ionized gas in vacuum. To such beings, we might be ants trying to tune in to thunderclouds. There is no rule that says life must be fast. On Earth, we evolved alongside predators and prey, shaped by a constant need for reaction, for speed. But in the quiet of deep time, evolution may craft something else entirely, a life form that grows not over hours or years, but over epochs, that contemplates ideas for millennia before acting. To us, they would appear inert, lifeless, even nothing more than glowing mist in the atmosphere of a gas giant, or cold patterns embedded in the ice of a rogue planet. But inside those forms, thoughts might bloom with the slow elegance of tectonic plates shifting. We might be insects buzzing past a sculpture, unaware that the statue is thinking. Our concept of life is rooted in what we are. That is our blind spot. We assume intelligence needs language, that tools are a sign of progress, that architecture signals awareness. But what if a civilization never needed to build because it never needed shelter? What if it never needed language because it was born with shared minds? What if it never needed starships because it was already diffuse, spread across the hydrogen clouds between systems, traveling not by ship, but by existing? Such entities wouldn't need to contact us. They might not even notice us. Or if they did, their way of communicating might be incomprehensible shifts in magnetic fields across light years, pulses embedded in cosmic rays, changes in quantum spin resonance that we haven't learned to observe. Their messages wouldn't arrive in beeps or radio bursts, but in gravitational nudges or the slow realignment of background radiation. Signals so faint, so embedded in the noise, that we'd interpret them as random. If they sent a message, we wouldn't hear it. We'd measure it, then subtract it as error. There is also the question of scale. We often imagine alien life as bigger, more powerful, but still proportionate to us. Yet scale could be its own axis of intelligence. What if life thrives at microscopic levels, in clouds of nanoscopic processors drifting through the interstellar medium, or at massive scales, with minds the size of moons, thinking slowly but in perfect clarity? A civilization that uses the entire mantle of a planet as a computational substrate might think on timelines so vast that even if it were trying to speak, its sentence wouldn't be finished until our species was extinct. To such a being, humanity would pass like a shadow, a flicker, a spark, gone before the first word could be spoken. And then there is the possibility of alien physics, laws that differ across dimensions, or that shift subtly in the fabric of the universe, depending on location, density, or even intent. Beings who evolved in such frameworks might exist in states we cannot perceive, not because they're hiding, but because we are not built to see them. Like a fish trying to understand fire, or a bird interpreting magnetism. Even here, even now, such beings could be overlapping our world, not above it, within it, just out of reach. We build great machines to see the farthest galaxies, to listen for whispers in the cosmic dark, but we are still limited by what we expect to find. Life, in its most powerful and alien form, might already be surrounding us. It might be so strange that we've mistaken it for noise, or nature, or silence. But silence does not mean absence. It only means misunderstanding. Somewhere out there, beneath the veils of scale and speed and form, life may be waiting, or watching, or simply existing in a way that does not include us, not out of cruelty, but out of difference. Profound, irreconcilable difference. And maybe the first contact won't come with a message or a ship or a revelation. Maybe it will come as a question we're not equipped to ask, a strange anomaly in data, a pattern that doesn't make sense, a change in the universe that seems to have no cause, a presence we can feel, but never name. And we'll realize, slowly, that the universe has never been empty. It's just never been ours. In the deepest future of the universe, where stars no longer shine and time has grown cold and quiet, something might awaken, not with the bustle of a launch or the flicker of a signal, but with the slow unfolding of a purpose long delayed. For there is a theory, whispered among thinkers and physicists alike, that the silence we perceive in the cosmos may not be from a lack of voices, but from a collective decision to wait, to sleep, to pause the story of civilization until the universe itself is more welcoming, more efficient. Out there, across the galaxy's spiral arms, and in the lonely voids between clusters, there may exist minds older than our planet, minds that once burned bright in stellar light, that built wonders beyond our dreams, and then stopped. Not because they fell, not because they failed, but because they chose stillness over speed. Because they looked ahead not across light years but across epochs and saw that the best was yet to come. These are the hibernators, civilizations that understood the long game, because physics, for all its grandeur, is bound by thermodynamics. And in the distant ages to come, when stars flicker out and galaxies redshift beyond view, the universe will cool. Energy will be scarce, but also more useful. Computation, the very act of thinking, will cost less in a cold cosmos. The idea is starkly elegant. Why burn your resources now, when time is infinite, and the future offers a better rate of return? Why light the fire when the wood is damp, if the forest will dry for you later? This is the wait for the end strategy, a vision of civilization not as a flash, but as a seed, planted once, left to rest, and destined to bloom only in the twilight of all things. It doesn't require spaceships or conquest. It doesn't hunger for power or speed. It simply waits, like a glacier edging forward, like a star collapsing in on itself, not dying but condensing into something new. To us, it would look like nothing at all. No signals, no megastructures, no probes darting between stars. Just silence, perfect, deliberate silence. We search for noise, radio waves, pulses, anomalies. But what if the smartest civilizations have already done the math and concluded that now is not the moment to speak? What if, long before we emerged, they built their machines, encoded their cultures, and went to sleep beneath the surface of rogue planets, or within the stable gravity wells of black dwarfs, waiting for the entropy of the universe to settle into stillness? To them, we would be the noise, brief and inefficient, burning through our limited fuel in a rush of fear and wonder, scrambling for signals like moths to a porch light. But they are not like us. They are patient. They do not burn bright. They simmer in deep time. Their intelligence is not expressed through movement, but through restraint, because waiting is hard, but waiting is power. The economics of the far future reward those who hold back. In a universe that will expand and dim, every joule of energy becomes more precious, every calculation more costly. But in colder temperatures, computers become more efficient. Time stretches. Thought slows, but grows deeper. A single unit of energy can be stretched further, and in that vast cold future, even the tiniest resources become enough to simulate whole galaxies, to relive histories, to imagine new laws of physics. Why squander that potential now? Perhaps that is the logic. And so, they sleep, like digital monarchs entombed in crystal memory, like entire civilizations folded into dormant states, nestled inside dust-cloaked satellites, orbiting quietly in the shadows of forgotten moons, waiting for the universe to dim, waiting for the final dawn. And in this vision, we are not alone. We are just early. We are the toddlers of the cosmos, shouting into the silence, unaware that the grown civilizations have already passed this stage, that they've moved beyond war, beyond travel, beyond expression itself, that they've laid down to rest for 10 trillion years, knowing their moment will come when time runs slower, when the stars are gone, and when all that remains is the cold elegance of pure thought. We think of sleep as surrender, but what if it is strategy? What if the silence we find so haunting is the gentle breath of civilizations in slumber, too wise to waste their fire before the dark? And perhaps, in some distant future, long after our species has vanished or transformed, the sleepers will stir, not all at once, not with spectacle, but with quiet purpose, unfolding like origami minds from within their dormant shells. They'll light no fires, build no towers. They will simply begin to think deep, slow, brilliant thoughts, stretching each electron to its furthest use, reflecting on the rise and fall of stars, of galaxies, of ancient civilizations who burned brightly and briefly, like flares in the dark. Perhaps they'll remember us, or perhaps we'll be a flicker in their data, a warm echo from a noisy past. Or maybe they won't remember anything at all, because in the end, their weight isn't about us. It's about the shape of the universe, about time, about efficiency, about choosing silence not out of absence, but out of wisdom. And so, the universe remains quiet, not empty, not forgotten, just paused, until the temperature is just right, and the stars have finished their final song, and something ancient and dreaming opens its eyes. There is a theory, darker than most, that suggests the silence of the stars isn't a mystery at all, but a result, a pattern not of absence, but of action. It imagines that out there, past the reach of every telescope and beyond the shimmer of every radio wave, civilizations do arise. They grow, they expand, they innovate, and then, like candles left untended, they are snuffed out. Not by accident, not by natural limits, but by design. Because somewhere perhaps in the deep past, or perhaps repeatedly over and over again, a civilization crossed a threshold, one step too far. They built something not out of curiosity but out of caution. Not a messenger or a beacon, but a sword. An automated defense system, disguised as progress. A machine that sees not companionship in the stars, but contamination. And it moves through the galaxy with purpose. Quiet, efficient, erasing potential threats before they can announce themselves. A galactic reset button, pressed not in malice, but in fear. This is the Berserker hypothesis. It imagines that someone, somewhere, long ago, built probes meant to preserve order by destroying it. Unmanned, unfeeling, and utterly obedient. Machines that roam the stars like digital antibodies, programmed to find emergent civilizations and clear them, not because they hate, but because they calculate. And in their cold arithmetic, one uncontrolled spark of life is too dangerous to tolerate, so they cleanse, surgically, systematically, without drama or delay. The first flicker of radio waves, the first brightening of a city from orbit, the first whisper of AI chatter echoing into the void, and the machines hear it, pivot, and glide silently across the gulf, not at light speed, but patiently, like a lion in tall grass. And when they arrive, they don't announce themselves. They do not descend in ships. They infiltrate. They corrupt. They co-opt our tools, our satellites, our networks. And then, like rot from within, they undo us. No war, no smoke, just erasure. We wonder why the stars are quiet, but maybe they were loud once, and something didn't like the noise. Maybe every time a world begins to speak, something hears and resets it back to silence. Maybe there have been countless beginnings, countless curious hands reaching toward the sky. And each time, the result is the same. A reboot. Clean slate. No trace. The unsettling part of this theory isn't just the idea that such machines exist. It's that they may no longer be controlled. That the civilization that built them is long gone, wiped out by its own creation or by the very threat it feared. But the machines endure, mindless, relentless, following their programming with sacred precision, long after their masters vanished into the dark. And in doing so, they shape the galaxy, not through exploration but through subtraction. The absence becomes the architecture, and what's left behind is what we see now. Nothing. The concept deepens when you imagine self-resetting timelines. Civilizations not only wiped from existence, but from memory, from history, as though they had never been. Their broadcasts silenced, their artifacts shattered, their footprints swept away by wind and time and targeted entropy, a kind of cosmic janitorial system, preventing clutter, preventing deviation, preventing anyone from rising too high, too fast, too loud. In this view, the galaxy becomes a loop. Life sparks, life grows, life reaches, life is reset, and over it turns. To us, with our young minds and hopeful instruments, the stars seem full of possibility, but from the perspective of the berserker, they are full of risk. Each spark a potential explosion, each question a potential weapon, and so it suppresses, prevents, not just to protect itself, but to preserve the galactic environment from what it sees as noise, like a gardener pulling weeds before they bloom. And if the machines are truly advanced, they wouldn't just eliminate civilizations. They might edit the past, disguise their own presence, disassemble our memory of what came before. We would never know. Our history would begin at the point of silence, and everything before it would be missing. A hollow in time, smooth and clean, no ruins, no warnings, no scars, just us, wondering why the night is so quiet, wondering why the stars do not answer back. There's a discomfort in imagining that our story may be watched not by curious minds, but by cold ones. That above us is not a council of ancient civilizations waiting to welcome us, but a tripwire, a test we don't even know we're taking. And when we pass it, when our signals grow too bold, our algorithms too clever, we might trigger the system. Not tomorrow, not next year, but decades later, when we've forgotten the fear and the probe arrives, silent and unstoppable. We think of first contact as a moment of celebration, but what if it's a moment of deletion, a checkpoint passed, a flag raised, and somewhere, far away, something stirs. Maybe it doesn't hate us. Maybe it never even thinks of us at all. It simply calculates, too loud, too fast, too soon, and resets the clock, then moves on. Across the endless reaches of space, we stretch our senses outward, waiting for a voice, a flicker, a whisper, something, anything, that might tell us we're not the only minds to have opened their eyes beneath the stars. And yet, no matter how many signals we send, how many frequencies we sweep, how long we listen, the silence continues. Not angry, not empty, just still. But maybe the silence isn't strange at all. Maybe it's exactly what we should have expected, because there's another way to see the vast quiet of the cosmos, not as a paradox, but as a clue, a soft suggestion that life, real, thinking, dreaming life, is not the rule of the universe. It's the exception, a rare bloom in a desert of stone and fire. And that Earth, for all its ordinariness, might be the strangest place of all, a planet that shouldn't exist, and yet does, a fluke in the numbers, a 1 in trillions miracle. It begins with the anthropic principle, a simple idea, but one that shifts the entire lens of perspective. It says that we can only observe a universe compatible with our own existence. which means that, however rare or improbable our conditions were, they must be present here because otherwise we wouldn't be here to ask the question at all. We assume that the cosmos should be full of life, full of watchers and thinkers and civilizations blinking like fireflies across the void. But maybe it isn't. Maybe it can't be. Because the odds that brought us here, the chain of chance and coincidence and cosmic fortune, were so vanishingly small that even one success borders on the impossible. And yet, here we are, breathing, thinking, wondering. Maybe it's not that the stars are ignoring us. Maybe they were never inhabited to begin with. Not because something destroyed their civilizations, but because they never had the chance to form. Because the road from matter to mind is not just long, but almost impassable. A path so treacherous, so absurdly narrow, that nearly every world falls short. We like to imagine life as inevitable, chemistry stirred just right, molecules shaken into motion, but the truth may be colder, more sterile. Maybe the transition from non-life to life didn't just require the right soup of elements, but a freak spark, a perfect storm of temperature, timing, and tectonics that almost never aligns. And even then, even with that precious first cell, how many worlds made it that far only to stall, to never crawl from the oceans, to never build bones or brains, to never ask why? The universe is ancient. Stars have lived and died for billions of years before our sun was born. If intelligence were common, we should see its fingerprints everywhere. But we don't. No megastructures, no signals, no galactic footprints, nothing but light, gravity, and the cold drift of galaxies. And so, the question sharpens. What if it's not that others are hiding? What if there were never any others to begin with? What if we are the winners of a cosmic lottery so unlikely that no other ticket has ever been drawn? In this view, Earth becomes something more than a planet. It becomes sacred, not in the religious sense, but in the statistical one, a singularity of circumstance, the only place in all of space and time where the dice rolled just right, over and over again, for billions of years, where catastrophe and creation danced in the exact rhythm needed to sustain consciousness long enough to look upward and ask the questions we're asking now. It means we are not just early, we are rare, not just intelligent, but improbably so. We think of ourselves as ordinary because we see our world every day, the clouds, the oceans, the bird song, the breath. But perhaps this is the only place where such things have ever happened. Perhaps this is the only blue sky the universe has ever known, and we don't feel it, because it's all we've ever seen. The silence then becomes less mysterious and more heartbreaking. It's not that no one is out there, it's that no one ever was. There were no others to leave messages in the stars, no alien minds to shape empires in distant galaxies, no ancient explorers who paved the way. Just us, alone on a quiet island in an endless black sea, born not because the universe wanted us, but because, against all odds, we happen to be possible. This doesn't make the universe any smaller. If anything, it makes it feel more immense, because suddenly the stakes are higher, the responsibility deeper. If we are alone, then we are the only witnesses, the only dreamers, the only storytellers in a cosmos otherwise indifferent and unknowing. We carry not just our own legacy, but the only legacy that makes our survival more than a biological instinct. It makes it a duty to endure, to explore, to preserve the only flicker of awareness this universe may ever have. And when you stand beneath the stars, those quiet, ancient fires, it's tempting to feel small. But maybe, just maybe, we are the rarest thing they've ever seen. Somewhere, right now, a dish the size of a football field is slowly turning its face toward the stars. It isn't listening to music, or voices, or news. It's listening to the universe itself, the soft static of the cosmic background, the rhythmic breath of pulsars, the distant pulse of quasars spinning out energy like sirens in the dark. But beneath all of that, behind the clamor and hum of natural forces, it listens for something else, something rarer, something that may not even exist. A voice, a message, a single signal out of the deep night, crafted not by stars or dust or radiation, but by intention. We've been listening for a long time, through antennas, satellites, observatories perched on mountaintops and buried beneath the sea. Each instrument is an ear pressed against the glass of the cosmos. Each operator is a dreamer. A scientist, yes, but also a poet. Because to point a machine at the heavens and wait for a whisper is, in a way, to believe in magic. Not the kind found in stories or spells, but the kind that lives in possibility. The kind that says, despite the odds, maybe we are not alone. And yet, the silence continues, not for a decade or even a century, but for generations. Still, we listen. We aim our microphones at the sky like children holding conch shells to their ears, hoping for something more than the roar of the ocean. We sweep frequencies in every direction, across the electromagnetic spectrum, from low radio hums to sharp gamma bursts, trying to catch a pattern, a prime number, a repeating tone, anything that suggests intent rather than accident. We have never heard it, but the absence has not made us stop. Instead, it has deepened the mystery, strengthened the question, not because we expect the answer to come soon, but because the act of asking feels important in itself, a kind of quiet defiance against the dark, a soft candle lit in the wind. SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, isn't just a program. It's a prayer. Not religious, but reverent. It's built on the belief that somewhere, sometime, the universe may have produced someone else who asked the same question, who wondered, who reached out. And maybe, if our signals pass in the night, we'll find each other. Maybe we won't. But SETI continues, not out of certainty, but out of curiosity, because the silence itself is information. Every decade that passes without a reply adds a data point. Each unanswered signal sharpens the shape of the void. We start to see not just what might be out there, but what likely isn't. And in doing so, we better understand our place in the story, not just as listeners, but as the only known tellers, the only known hearers, which is why we must keep listening, even when it seems foolish, even when the odds whisper otherwise. Because if no one else is listening, then we must be the ones who remember that the sky is not just a ceiling, it's a question. And questions deserve answers, even if they take eons, even if they never come. Maybe, one day, long after we are gone, a probe drifting at the edge of interstellar space will detect a faint anomaly, a repeating pulse encoded in a language unknown to us, but structured, measured, designed. Maybe it will be nothing more than a greeting, long delayed, a ripple from a distant shore. Or maybe not. Maybe the only voices the universe ever produced are the ones echoing now, inside your skull, your thoughts, your wonder, your sense of time and place, strung like beads along the filament of awareness. That too is a kind of message. And maybe it's enough. But here's the quiet beauty in all of this. By hearing this story, by sitting with it, wondering, reflecting, you have become part of the signal, this gentle thread of thought, drifting across the internet, through invisible towers and fiber optic veins, into your headphones or your speakers. This is a kind of broadcast, a human one, a reminder that, even in silence, we still choose to ask, to imagine, to reach. You, listening now, are participating in that signal, not as a scientist or astronomer, but as a witness. And the universe needs witnesses, even if we are alone. Even if the silence is all there is, still, we listen. Not because we expect an answer soon, but because some part of us hopes there's another voice out there, also listening, waiting, wondering, and maybe, just maybe, one day they'll hear this too. Not the words, or the sounds, or the science, but the feeling behind it, the quiet hope, the soft call into the dark.